start with?
Okay, we are live with JP McDonald, professional name, John Paul McDonald.
Yeah.
Nicholas Alexander Karadza, my brother's going to join us in a second. What I want to start with is I'm going to buy, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm going to get a Tesla next week. And then, I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I had someone say, you're going to get a Tesla, so you're like, into the environment and stuff. And I guess this is just the selfishness. I just keep thinking about the HOV lane. I really just want the green plates so that I can drive on the HOV lane. I had a BMW X5 with the green plates, and I guess that's bad to admit, but that's definitely why I'm buying. And I think I'm a little bored, so I'm getting the Tesla.
Okay.
But when I got the BMW X5, I think it was the Liberal provincial government had a credit where I actually didn't even know about it. And I got I think it was $7,500 back from the provincial government for leasing the car, which is completely ridiculous. Yeah, imagine that. The government's giving me $7,500 back for a lease. I didn't even buy the car.
Right.
I think it was that much anyway. And anything in the tax world going on that I should know about with these cars right now, or no?
Yeah, with the Teslas,
I know I'm catching you off guard a little bit here.
Yeah, a little bit. This is, it's new and it's confusing. So there's accelerated CCA rates. We've gone over CCA. You can actually claim 100% in year one. So you can write the car off in year one.
And that's because it's a green vehicle? No.
Well, the government's come out and given after, I think it was like April 16th or April 21st, they've given advanced acceleration CCA to a lot of different classes of assets, not houses, but computer equipment. This is shit that we didn't even know. And we're an accounting firm and we're sitting there doing taxes and we're like, hey guys, why is the CCA rate out? Why is the CCA rate out on like purchases of new computer? Normally that's 50% year one, year two, but everything's going in at 100% depending on the date that they bought it. So Tesla vehicles are one of them. If you bought it after a certain date, you get an advanced accelerated rate, which is 100% write-off.
So that's
on 30%.
That's brand new.
That came out. That's an initiative the government must have put out because they wanted to
spur consumption.
Exactly, without fucking telling anyone. Sorry for swearing.
No, it's good. Holy shit!
It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know about it. No one in my office.
So sorry, what do you mean up to 30%? So up to 30% of the cost of the vehicle can be written off?
Well, yeah, for Teslas, you get you're in a certain class of asset. So it's 30,000 you're allowed to write off. I think electric vehicles might even be more. It might be 50,000 that you're allowed to write off. Yeah, I'd have to look into it, but it's crazy. But then there's a credit that if you apply for the credit when you're buying the vehicle, it's something like $5,000. Like you said, you got the 7,500. If you take that credit, apparently you're not allowed the accelerated write-off. So it's confusing, very convoluted.
Like everything to do with taxes.
I know.
Okay, so there was that. And also just the reason I'm hesitating even saying the Tesla, I just have to, it's just like a little political thing with me and maybe Bitcoin, is that Elon Musk was like jumped onto the Bitcoin bandwagon. And then he basically said, oh, well, it uses way too much energy. And I can't get into this whole Bitcoin world. And just part of me is like, at that time, I'd already reserved the Tesla. I'd reserved the Tesla before he jumped on the Bitcoin bandwagon. Now, I've been waiting for this thing forever. And I didn't actually care. But then when he pulled out of it, I thought, I had that moment where I'm like, you know what? Fuck you, dude. You don't understand this Bitcoin stuff?
Yeah.
Fuck you and your car. Keep taking it back. But then I realized there's so much demand for these cars. I don't think that has any impact on the guy. And I'm like, I'll just keep the car.
I drive a truck. I saw his truck that he's making, and I will not buy it. I don't think they're.
I know a few people who I think it was $250 to put your name on the waiting list or something like that for that truck. I know a few people with multiple waiting list orders for that truck. So we'll see if we see. But that's going to be like a couple years out. Yeah. Okay, so by the time this goes out, the election in Canada will likely be over. I assume when everyone's listening to this, we have a prime minister in place.
Hopefully.
What the housing plans from what you see now? What are your thoughts on some of these housing initiatives from the different political parties here in Canada?
I think they're a joke to begin with. Liberals are coming out. They're cool. They've all hit what needs to be done, and that's supply, which I have talked about. we invest in real estate because interest, supply and demand. We know demand is there. Interest isn't going anywhere. So it's supply. That's what they're trying to hit. And coming out and saying they're going to build 1 million to 1.4 million to 500,000 homes in the next, 3 to 4 years is, to me, a slap in the face to all of us who have gone out and bought homes. They're trying to put us in the red on those homes. They're not trying to, but in effect,
because you
they're going
think
to.
the more supply is then going to decrease the value of the existing homes
For a very short
until
period of
they're
time.
absorbed in the market.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that technically should be what happens in an economic model, and that's why they're doing it. Now, I go back and I just look at kind of, in high school, someone was running for the president, and he said, "I'm going to make the cafeteria free food for everyone." This is the same thing.
Unless Canadian politics has been reduced to high school student president promises, "Hey, everybody, free hot dogs at the caf." Free pizza, free fries with gravy at the caf. Vote for me.
But if you think about it, you talk to everyone and you're like, did you vote? No. Do you vote? No. So many people I know don't vote. And why? Because they all say the same shit and they all lie and they don't do what they say they're going to do. So this is another thing where that is, because Trudeau's not going out and building a house. He's going to create...
And the numbers, what are the hold on, I have the Liberal one up. What is the Liberal promise? The Liberal promise, let's get a
1 million.
The Liberal,
1.4.
1.4 million homes in 4 years.
Yeah, and they're going to retrofit and they're going to do some stuff.
Okay, but just for context, like, unless I'm way off, the stat that comes to mind for me is that we put out about 36,000 housing units in the GTA a year. 36,000. That's our full effort. And they're going to put in 1.4 million in 4 years. So we're talking about 300,000... No, more, 350,000 homes.
Now, this goes across Canada.
Sure.
Right?
Okay, but 25% of all of Canada is in the GTA.
Okay. Well, there's only two markets they're trying to slow down, which is Ontario and
Vancouver.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So what are they going to do? They're going to go and they're going to give billions of dollars away. Okay. So they're trying to cool down the market by giving billions of dollars to who? To developers to go out and build. Developers, anybody in construction right now, can you get someone to come to your house to do something?
No. Yeah.
The construction industry is
swamped,
so tapped out. So how the hell are they going to go out and build another $1.4 million? Or
Nick, we were just saying how they're, the Liberal promise of 1.4 million homes in 4 years. And currently, I think we're putting out in the Greater Toronto area, and I know that's a Canada number, so JP, thanks for calling that out. The GTA number is 36,000 or so, 40,000, whatever that range is.
That's a joke. Right the whole promise. But I mean, the conservatives.
So they're going to tenfold. They're going to tenfold it in this. No, it wouldn't, because we're 25%. So if it's, how many is that? Let's do the math here. 1.4 million is how many a year?
It's nice of you to do the math. I would just say this is
bullshit.
BS and
so
move on.
It's 350,000 houses a year in the country of Canada. And of that, if we're 25% of the country, 87,500 in the GTA in this area. We're currently doing 40. So they're going to somehow immediately, with no supply chain changes, no labor increases, they're going to more than double our housing output over the next 4 years.
And go talk to your point, you were talking about a contractor locally coming in, but go talk to any developer and say, hey, how quickly can you get a project approved to double what you're doing right now? They would laugh at you. It's just getting worse. Yeah, but I mean, and I guess but it's no different than any other. So many of the other promises they make too.
You just missed it. We were going to run on fries with gravy. Is going to win. We're talking about how a high school president would promise free fries and gravy at the caf, and that's how they get elected.
Right? Yeah, that would. But Liberals, you guys,
I like the Rice Krispie squares.
You guys should probably sue the Liberals here. They're going
we
after
have to sue somebody.
They're going after a rent to own model.
Yeah, we like to laugh.
That's so old school. We've been there, done that. That's how slow the government is. We figured that out. We barely do that anymore. That's in the past.
When we started doing that, we had other real estate companies calling us saying it was fraud. It was illegal. You couldn't do that in Canada. Now the federal government's trying to do it.
Which makes me think, holy shit, maybe it isn't good if the federal government's doing it. Then you immediately doubt it. You immediately doubt everything. But
So one of the other really cool things was that people should know if the Conservatives do get voted in was over the years we've always heard about replacement rules, replacement property. So When I owned my last building, when I sold it, I moved into my new building, and I didn't have to pay tax.
You're talking about your business, though.
My business,
Yeah.
yes. So this is replacement rules, where any gain that I have, I can reduce the price of my new purchase for tax purposes. Replacement rules strictly prohibited for real estate.
Got it. I didn't know.
Rental real
I
estate.
don't think I knew that.
We like to rent and pay other people's bills for our businesses.
Yeah, we rented for 10 years.
But for rental real estate, this is always been prohibited. The Conservatives are looking at changing that. So if you own a rental and you sell it, any gain that you have, you can apply that gain to the purchase of a new rental.
Yeah, that's like the U.S. The people have been asking that forever. They came close the last time when Harper was into it. So in the U.S. it's called the 1031 exchange.
Okay.
And Harper came very close to doing that because they had run on that in the past and promised something like that, and they never ended up doing it. Right. But yeah. I don't think that type of stuff, I don't know, man. If it seems like a hard sell right now in today's world, that if anyone's gonna be able to get that passed. I mean, obviously if a party promises that and they get in with a majority, then they're able to pass that stuff. But without a majority right now, I don't think any major changes like that are gonna kind of fly.
So this will be going out just as the election's over. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But all the parties are promising these kinds of things. So we talked about the Liberal plan there, but I think the Conservative plan is 1 million property. They're 1 million even over 4 years, I believe. NDP is something like
500.
over next 10 years. The NDP is over the next 10 years. They're going to spend $14 billion on 500,000 homes.
Affordable
housing units. Yeah, we'll see how affordable it is. How do you put 14? You're going to put 14 billion new dollars that you do not have saved up into the economy, and somehow you're going to make prices stay the same.
Well, we know where that's coming from.
Have you done the math? Someone in the office did. I think it was Nohad in the office did it. She said she did the math on, I forget which plan it was, about how much per unit that they were attributing to it.
Yeah, what is 14 billion?
I don't know if it was the NDP number. But I think it was the Liberal Conservative number, and it was like $80,000, dollars a unit.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I'm like, what kind of unit? I don't know, because I haven't been involved in the cost for actual apartment building construction for large apartment buildings. But in my head, I'm like, 80,000 a unit doesn't seem like it's going to get you very much in today's world with prices headed the way they are. And I mean raw material prices and labor prices, right?
Yeah, if I'm doing the math right, that's 28,000 a unit.
No, on the NDP plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess if they do start building those tiny homes or like the container homes from the shipping containers.
What are they building?
Actually, no, shipping containers I think are not just to move them. I think the actual cost of them. I was talking to Dave, is up like 30% just this year.
There goes that.
I must have done the math wrong. 14 billion on 500,000. No, I think I have it right. Times 500,000. I think that is 14 billion. Unless I'm looking at my calculator wrong. Yeah, it's 28,000 a home.
Yeah.
None of this makes sense. They don't have the savings to do it. They don't have the money that it's going to be printed.
I think they're going to unlock land.
They're going to use someone said that. I don't know if it was Conservatives or who said they're going to
take some federal land.
Federal land. Yeah, okay, so remove the land cost, but still on the build cost, what are you building at 28,000? Yeah, but if you maybe build big apartment building condo style, there might be there's I guess anything's possible. When it comes to homeless, the PC saying they're going to invest.
But even still, that's tough because I just did so let's say a 500 square foot unit at 28,000. That's $56 a foot. So that's
okay. Because most builders we're talking about at $300 they're struggling. Never mind.
Yeah, no. 300 is
nice.
Is a very nice place.
Okay, no. Yeah. I'm saying, but they're not saying it's 200 or 150. They're saying it's 300.
I could have done my build out when we did our build out, 100 a square foot, guaranteed.
Build out for your office.
The full build out, yes. But that's just the build out.
Yeah, but you're talking just the build out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking the whole structure.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah. So I don't know where this is headed, but they're unlocked land. They don't have the savings. They're going to just print the money. That's going to make prices in the valuation of our dollar increase. Prices go up. The whole thing's just a disaster. Mm-hmm. We're headed to a debacle in the next few years that just gets worse and worse and worse. No one's talking any sense. No one's talking any sense.
No, the best thing is the thing that it made me hit home, and I've shared this before, is they can't stop because of all the debt in the world and the way they're funding the economy, they can never stop printing, or deflation hits and they can't have deflation. And with everything, it's what Jeff Booth talks about often. It made it clear to me when he was talking about the oil. He's like, look, with all the new advances in technology, can we get more oil or less oil now? Like, where should the cost of oil be? Right. And he's like, well, yeah, it's easier to get oil out of the wells, out of the ground now. There's more oil available because new technology, even if you talk about oil sands and fracking and all this stuff. Right. So why is the cost going up? Well, the cost is going up because they're forcing the cost up through inflation because they can't let the price go down because it messes everything up. Right. So it forces wages up and everything else. They can't let the prices go down. And without new money, the prices will all start falling down just from technology and demand and stuff like that. So it doesn't end. It doesn't end until it gets revalued against something in some other way, shape, or form.
And if we're just accelerating the madness, like the next 10 years, if it's more than the last 10 years, property prices are going to explode.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think
in nominal terms.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's where everyone gets messed up. They're like, I don't get it. How can the property prices explode? But the thing is, it's just the value of the dollars. I mean, the inflation numbers came out this month, today for last month in Canada. I think it's over 4% now, which really means that they're higher. But they're even reporting the highest inflation numbers in I forget how many years that it said. So like the whole thing is getting screwed up.
I'm having a struggle to try to explain that to people because some people are telling me, hey, look, the price of my house has gone up. So the price of my house is worth more dollars today, and I'm feeling, quote unquote, richer because of that. But then the very next sentence will be, I would like to move, but then when I look around, everything has gone up, so I really can't get ahead. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So then I'm like, has the price of your house really gone up? Because in comparison to all the other houses around you, you don't have a net gain here.
Right.
So if you're just depending on your own house as your kind of best savings vehicle, you're not getting ahead. You actually have to have some investments that outpace inflation.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because I've told it doesn't have to be investments, because I've advised some clients and they've done it, is time to move up. Get into a bigger, better house now, because if it's worth more now, it's going to be worth much more. Everyone's getting priced out, mm-hmm. right? Even people in
sure.
You and I had this conversation.
Yes.
Like everyone is getting priced out from making that jump. And within the next 5-10 years, that is just going to be.
But then someone comes back. So someone who doesn't know JP hears that and says, oh yeah, like that really makes sense. You just buy a bigger house, because then when prices do change or if things do hit the fan and shit hits the fan, then I'm screwed. And I think I know where you're coming from. You're like, well, if you just look at the fundamentals of low rates forever, increasing population growth, the lack of supply here, this trend is just going to continue. So you're better off getting into a bigger home that's going to appreciate at a faster pace because it's a larger number, 100%. Larger price tag on the house.
Yeah, because your debt becomes
smaller in relation to the bigger price.
Yeah. So look, because I asked Kyle in our office to pull some numbers based on the carrying costs of properties, based on like how can prices go up this much, trying to show the impact of the rates had on all this and the borrowing cost. So in 1975, the average, it was a Toronto home. I think it was like a 3-bedroom home. It was $46,000. Okay, mortgage rate was 11.25%. So the monthly mortgage payment was $450. Adjusted for inflation, that monthly mortgage payment was $2,200. And then all through, as prices rose.
Current day dollars, it's $2,200.
Yeah, $2,200. So even if you go to 2010, when the average purchase price was $345. So remember, we went from 1975 average purchase price of $46,000 to 2010 $345,000 when we used a 5.79% interest rate. Even though rates were lower, we were using the posted rate to keep it even. The carrying costs are $26.33. So they've only gone up. Even though the property price went from 46 to 345. What's that? 700%, over 700%. Your actual carrying costs in adjusted for inflation to today's dollars only went up by about 20%.
So the only ones getting screwed here are the banks.
Why?
Because of the interest.
Yeah.
It's just gone.
Never tell me
flipped.
that. Yeah.
Except
you can never,
see how we've just
I had a heart
paused?
attack. What do you mean the banks are getting screwed? Yeah. I would love to be in the bank's business. You sell money of which you don't have to accumulate it. You're allowed to create it when somebody asks you for it, and then you charge interest when people borrow it from you.
Yeah.
Like imagine us three right now, we could just say, hey, let's start a bank. And here's the idea. We won't have any savings in the back. But when the next person comes through the door and asks for money, we'll say, sign these papers. Yeah. And when they sign those papers for $1 million loan, we'll just go in the back and we'll pretend we're doing shit. Yeah. And then we'll punch some keys on a keyboard and magically $1 million. Well, it's like, that is the best. If the banks cannot make money with that business model, I don't know what I have for you.
Well, your cost of goods is not. It's like if you were selling tables and your cost of goods of tables were nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you can't make it, if you can't have a profitable business in that environment. But hold on, let me just share one more thing before we get off this topic for a sec. So that was 2010, because after 2010, we know what started happening with property prices. They started really ramping up, right? Yep. So it did kind of start to disconnect a little bit. But even in 2015, when property prices went, the average Toronto price we're using here is 500,000. So we went from 46,000 to about 500,000, okay? Or it's 497. So we're just over 10 times. Rates were 4.64. The monthly mortgage payment adjusted for inflation is $3,100. So it only went up. It went up by less than 50%, from 2,200 to 3,100. But the property value went up 10 times. Yeah. Right. 10 times. This is why when people are like, well, how can property prices keep going up? It's this. This is why property prices are going up. It's not the price. It's the value of the dollar is changing so much.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think there's much more wiggle room on the interest, though. I mean, that correlation.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That correlation.
You're right. So what do you think happens next? Because I have some thoughts on that. Because you're right. We're at a breaking point.
Dude, I would love to know.
Everybody would love to know. Because so if just to catch everybody up, because we're skipping some points here, the thinking is that property prices can not go up any further because interest rates have come down to basically the bottom. Like there's another point they can drop. We just renewed a rental property at 1.35 or 2.5. I forget. 1.25.
No, wasn't it 1.5? I remember we're getting close to starting with a zero.
It was
1.25.
Yeah. So, they can drop, I guess, 1.25, but then we're down to negative. So really there's not much room to go. So how can property prices go higher if the carrying costs cannot go lower? Negative, which I don't think you're right. They can go there, but I don't think they want to go there. So what I think they're going to do, and I think, Nick, you know what I'm going to say.
They've already announced it.
Yeah, they're going to
they're running on
lengthen amortization schedules to just make it cheaper. So instead of 25 or 30 year, they're going to go back. Remember when we had 40 years in 2006 and 2007? They'll go back to 40 year, maybe even 50 year, on the premise that it is too hard for Canadians to buy. I'm the politician. I will solve your problems. We are going to ask the banks to extend the amortization schedule so that we can make housing affordable again.
They're going to do that for first-time home buyers.
Yeah. So then what?
At first, agreed.
Yeah. Okay. So then what does that do to them? I mean, I have my opinion. So I agree with you. I think that's coming.
So it creates more demand because more people then can buy because the carrying costs are lower.
Okay.
Because we've amortized it over.
And then what happens?
Then after that runs its course. Property prices continue to rise because you have now more demand. You haven't fixed the supply.
You fix the supply.
And if they fix the supply, then Canada's amazing and we did it.
But you gotta think they'll fix the supply for how long? Are they going to build 1 million homes every 4 years?
Yeah. Well, it depends though. To be fair, the population growth can slow. Like it has slowed the last couple of years. We've had
but you would need all these things to happen. You would need supply to increase. You would need immigration to slow down in this country for multiple years. Mm-hmm.
Which we're seeing now. So we're 2 years into a slowdown because of the number.
Okay, so I'm going to correct what I'm going to say.
Yeah,
you need supply to increase. You need immigration to go to zero for multiple years because we have so much demand in the system. We've done this math before that even if we get 200,000, which is half the target, we're still bringing in an insane amount of demand in properties into this country. Yeah. So we would need supply to increase, immigration to go to zero, and amortization rates to be extended to make things more affordable.
And they've announced next year's numbers. They're projecting 2% more.
Their goal,
on immigration.
Yeah.
We're gonna.
These numbers are fudged. These numbers this year are looking good. They're a little bit fudged though because they took a lot of people that were in the country already,
right?
And so they're not as strong as what they're reporting. But they're still. I mean, look, we're talking about historic numbers, anyways. But we're kind of splitting hairs.
Let's play that out. Just go like that, if we play that out a little bit further, what happens next? So if they do extend amortization schedules for first-time home buyers, they can't raise interest rates. What's the next move to make housing affordable? Assuming they can't build, to your point, JP, supply forever.
They're going to come to the conclusion that it's not homeownership. It's CMHC's mandate is affordable housing. Affordable housing doesn't mean that you own your house. it's affordable rent.
Oh shit! Where are you taking me? That everyone just has to rent, so they're going to get
not
into
everyone. It's yes, certain people are going to be priced out.
Well, if they're building for $56 a foot, then yeah, I think
is this not across Europe?
Yeah.
This is
it's
a
a
European
renter
model.
society. Yeah,
exactly. So that's bound to be what's going to happen here, based on what we're seeing.
So
it's
we're
not
just
necessarily a bad thing. Like, look at Montreal. Montreal has the highest number of rentals per capita in Canada. It doesn't.
No, I guess it's not a bad thing. It's just maybe we're the generation that's stuck between understanding that you could have bought your own home as you left school, and now we're seeing that you can't. Very few generations, I feel like we're caught between the boomers and the millennials.
Yeah.
And we kind of see what the boomers have done with the world, and we can kind of see the millennial angst. And we're just in the middle here. So I feel like that's what's frustrating. Like, we knew a time when you could buy your own home.
Yeah.
And now we see a time evolving where you can't. And that to me is a little frustrating. But I guess to your both your points, renting isn't like the end of the world.
Well, it's funny. Like, as we grew up, we lived through a time when the affordability went from a one-parent income or a one-person income to, buying the whatever quote unquote average starter home is a two-person income. And we're seeing it now go beyond the two-person income to a three-person income. I don't know how people are going to figure that one out, but or it's people like in Europe, families living together longer as well to try to solve it if they want to own, right?
Completely. I'm telling some of my staff, because I'm talking to younger people, and I'm saying, JP, what do I do? What do I do? Team up.
Yeah.
What would I do if
or
I
buy
was
a house
coming to
where you
school?
can rent part of the house if you're not going to team up.
But even my number one thing that I tell everyone is keep your parents out of it. It's time to grow up. Do it by yourself if you can. If you have a job, team up with some friends, buy a house. At least get yourself into the market. And then from there, you have an asset growing in the market that you might be able to then at some point move.
And rent the basement if you need to. Live in the basement if you need to.
Okay,
you gotta suck it up. Yeah.
So look, I'll play devil's advocate for a second, because that's good. That makes complete sense, especially when someone can be paying a part of it or all of it off for you, that type of stuff. But what about the people that are like, look, guys, I get what you're saying, but the prices, they can't keep going up anyway. So like you could be setting someone up, this young person, you're going to, burden them with $1 million purchase. They're going to have this big mortgage, property prices are going to drop. And now you're kind of giving them some really bad advice in their life.
It's very tough to give, because this is investment advice, and it's very tough to give this, but I practice what I preach. So I tell anyone, look, if your house goes down in value, that means I just lost a ton of money.
And if you break it down, because Nick, I think your point is totally valid. Is someone could come to you and say, "Hey, what happens when the market turns?" But if we look at all the factors,
which we just spoke about,
which
right?
we just spoke about, but the factor that we didn't speak about, which to me is the biggest risk, is the credit markets. If the banks seize up and stop lending, prices can absolutely and definitely will come down. Our real estate market is built on credit. If credit isn't accessible, the real estate market will come down. But my counter argument to that is the Central Bank of Canada, the Bank of Canada, and the US Fed cannot let that happen, because that would implode the entire financial system, because there's so much debt outstanding carried by the banks that if there was a credit contagion event, the central banks would step in and print even more money. So if there was, which to me is the biggest threat to property prices, credit contagion, banks seize up lending, nobody trusts each other, it would be 18 months max, and I think now after seeing the COVID response, because they came into COVID within 2 months. Like the central banks just pushed more money in faster than I ever thought possible. So I used to think it would be 2 months before they corrected the system. Now I think they could do it probably, if they did 2 months, they could probably do it in 2 weeks.
I think, didn't they do it faster? Their initial response was within 2
Yeah, but it
weeks
took about
almost.
2 months. Everything kind of did freeze up for like about 2 months. And then after 2 months, it was like off to the races.
Oh, I see what you're
saying.
saying.
They came faster in about a week.
To
they
save
put the
the
money
bank-
in the
yeah,
system.
to save the
but
system,
it took about 2 months for the
flow
economy
through
to
to
flow through and for us to see it in the economy.
Gotcha.
So what I'm saying now is if the credit, our biggest threat to the real estate market in Canada is credit perhaps, and the banking access to credit, I think if that seized up, it would be not an 18-month problem. I think it might be like a 2-month problem, maybe less. So if prices did come down to JP's point of, I guess something could happen, it's going to be corrected in like 2 months. And I'm not even saying this is right or good. This is actually wrong.
Yeah.
It's And then what bothers me, and on top of all this, is then people blame capitalism for all the problems that we have in society right now. And my argument back is, We haven't had capitalism for decades, because when you save capitalism to me is you save capital and then you take a risk. If you did great with your risk, you get a reward. If you didn't do so good, you lose.
Yep.
That's capitalism. Save up capital, take a risk. We have banks that take all these risks, don't do any good risk analysis, lend money like crazy, and then if they fail, they're bailed out.
Yep.
That is not capitalism. But yet capitalism is blamed for many of the problems that we have right now. The whole thing, I'm getting fucking pissed.
I know.
The whole thing is
No, but it's so true. Like, but it goes back to like the money side of it. Like if we were talking about this the other day in the office, so we're talking about some political stuff, obviously now during the election. This was provincial though. So remember when McGuinty was in power and they canceled the gas plant, that power plant that I think was Mississauga?
Yeah.
Wasn't the cost around $1 billion to cancel it in penalties? So that's $1 billion of taxpayers' money just poof, it's gone. They got elected, the Liberals got elected again, right? I think he was out, but it wasn't it Wynne that got in or something? Or maybe,
I think
forget.
you're right. I can't remember.
Right? But I'm like, if they couldn't just create this money or just borrow this money and all this deficit spending, and they actually had to be held accountable for this stuff, the political landscape would be very different as well. And the policies that were in place to support people and would get us out, the ones that would have to be forced to be in place because of the types of decisions they had to make, responsible decisions, would help everyone. It's not about like helping the rich. This would solve a lot of the inequality as well, because then people, to your point, could save money and the value of it would be held. Right now, someone, if they don't, if they're renting, let's say they're renting, they want to own a home. Some people don't, and that's good. Don't own one. But if they want to own a home, if they have to save up for 5 years, because of the way the system's structured, their money becomes worth less and less. They can't actually then purchase the property. But if we had something where people were held accountable and we had to have like something where your savings were actually held their value, then they could then, it would be easier for people to continue to improve their lives, which makes society as a whole better. But we let it's this government deficit spending and this money creation that screws everything.
Yeah, you raised it's comical point. I mean, someone sitting there saving their money trying to get a down payment, like,
yeah, I know.
I feel so bad. And I have clients in this situation. Yeah. I'm sorry to laugh, but I mean, it's comedy because it's impossible.
That bothers me to my core. And
it's like running on ice.
And that, how we were talking about renting's not so bad. The only argument I would have to counter that is that if you don't own assets in this system, you're not really getting ahead as well as people who do own assets are.
Right. Yeah, they can have other assets though, to be fair, right?
Yeah, but real estate's a beautiful one because of the leverage that you can get. Yeah. You save up, if you can magically, JP, to your point, magically save up the 20% down, or what's a first-time home buyer right now? 5% down?
Yeah, it's still 5, yeah.
5% down, but when an average price is like, so an average price in Burlington, Ontario of a single family home, or what's a condo in Burlington, Ontario right now?
I don't know,
700, 800 grand. Really? So you have to save up 40 grand to get into a condo.
As a first-time home buyer.
As a first-time, and that's a condo.
Yeah.
That's more than we saved up for single family.
Do they pay CMHC on top of that as well?
Yeah, it's tacked onto the mortgage. You don't have to pull it out of pocket. It's just tacked onto the mortgage.
And I saw they were looking at cutting that in half as well.
For first-time buyers, I think, right? Yeah. They're looking at shaving some of the CMHC fees.
That solves nothing.
The CMHC but it doesn't matter. It gives them something just to tell them, tell the first-time buyers, we're doing something for you.
Said it saves you $6,900.
Yeah.
But just so everyone understands, the CMHC fee is tacked onto the mortgage on the day of closing, so you don't have to pull it out of your pocket. So it doesn't help any first-time home buyers buy. It helps them have a lesser fee to pay off once they do buy.
Yeah, but $6,900 on a mortgage over 25 years is
agreed. But you're not helping any first-time homeowner actually buy with that. That's nonsense.
Yeah, no, we agree. Yeah.
Sorry,
Tom's looking at me like I'm trying to fight him on it. No, I'm like, no, we're on the same side here.
So far, none of these policies. What are the other policies? What was the Liberal one? The NDP one was going to. The NDP one sounded kind of good. The Conservative one. Oh, we talked about the Liberal one.
The NDP did.
No.
Well, they're going to spend $14 billion. I don't understand. What's the crisis? Is the crisis housing, or that they're spending another $14 billion? Do you guys understand how much they spend?
They're going to help people borrow more by increasing mortgage amortization period. Exactly what we're talking about. Sorry, I didn't know.
He was the first person to announce it.
Okay, I didn't actually realize the total length of time it takes to pay off a loan from 25 to 30. Oh, that's a small increase. They could do better. Come on.
Double it.
But that goes. But remember,
100 years. Pass on your mortgage.
You buy some
but
more
it goes to what we were
properties.
talking about with the carrying costs. Trying to just bring it doesn't. No one cares. Like, look, our society is structured in such a way that if someone needs to pay well, maybe not 100 million, but let's say $10 million for a home, okay, but it only costs them $2,000 a month. They don't care that they pay $10 million for the home. Yeah. We only care about the monthly cost. So that type of stuff actually matters.
Generational mortgages.
That's all people really care. Everything is, so many things are bought on just monthly payments, right? That's how everything is sold.
I can't believe in this article that they used the language. I don't know if it's straight from the NDP's platform, but it's going to help people borrow more.
It will, because it'll lower their money.
No, I agree. This is blowing my mind. Like, this is like a positive.
Yeah.
We're going to help you borrow more. Yeah. We will help you get into more debt.
I guess the debt does come first, Tom.
Yeah, the banks always win. Do you see how everything comes back to the bank? The banks win. We need to start a bank. We need to start. No, I hate this existing system. Forget it. But on all of this, I don't understand. The more that you look into some of the technology that's coming out with some of the whole crypto world and the decentralized finance world, I'm less inclined to believe that this world explodes like I used to think. Because I just thought, okay, we're going to hit a debt number with some crisis and there'll be contagion and everything will just shut down and it's going to be a disaster. And I'm like, the Bank of Canada, the US Fed are never going to allow that. It'll just be trillions and trillions and trillions. This will hyperinflate. But there's this beautiful new world that's opening up over here very slowly, and we're super early, and there's going to be a lot of failures in it in decentralized finance with Bitcoin as the money, all the other ones as the technology. I want to be very clear on how I say that. Bitcoin as the money, all the other ones as the technology and platforms. And maybe it's just a transition. And a lot because if you look at my son who's 19, why is he going to get a bank account beyond getting paid here from Rockstar when we need to dump in his salary? Beyond that, we're teaching him not to take on any debt. So he's going to be in hopefully a fortunate position where he follows that, saves up whatever he can save up and not take on debt. So he doesn't really need loans or mortgages. Any of his savings that he seems to be doing without my intervention, but just kind of himself learning all this stuff, is in Bitcoin and some other things that he's kind of on his risk tolerance that he's decided for himself.
Peter Schiff would say that you're really leading him in the wrong direction.
No, Peter Schiff. Yeah. But I'm just thinking, does that generation, are they even going to use banks? Because there's so much financial stuff being built in this new world. They might be able to get yield. They might be able to borrow against their Bitcoin.
I think the banks will look different. There'll be institutions of some sort, but they'll look different.
Agreed, but they look like they're going to be more distributed. And is it going to be TD Bank and CIBC and Royal Bank of Canada? Or are these things just dinosaurs dying out like a whimper?
Well, if they're smart.
No, I think you're going to have some commentary from some bankers.
I feel worried for them. Actually, hey, as much as I hate the banking system, I'm concerned for them.
Maybe in 50 to 100 years, maybe.
But if they're smart, if there's smart people leading it.
It's 10.
But if there's smart people leading it, they adjust.
They adjust, right. Agreed. But their adjustment would just be one of the Canadian banks buying some of these platforms.
Oh, see, I was saying, I thought that what you were going to say was, if there is smart people leading it. That's
No, there's definitely smart people in
that might lead to the comments,
that world. Yeah. And
but again, I mean, they're banks. They're there to lend money. So cryptos, you can borrow from crypto, I guess, but not to buy a house. So we'll see what happens with crypto coming into actual purchase equations.
Well, it is right now just in limited capacity, but for some high-end property transactions happening in different parts of the world. And then, in El Salvador you can go to McDonald's and buy with Bitcoin and Starbucks in El Salvador. And Ukraine just passed a law making it that they're looking to make it a legal tender as well in 2 years, I believe. Yeah. So they're studying.
Yeah, that law's not passed. I guess they passed the legislation to make it legal.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
And are they going full currency on that in the Ukraine?
I initially thought no. Then you sent me another article, and then I was like, oh, maybe they are. So yeah, but they're looking at kind of just standardizing it in some way, shape, or form. So, but you're right. It's definitely not there. But hold on, before we get off this for a second, because I don't know if you guys talked about this part of the platforms, because we were talking about the different parts of the platforms. What about the foreign ownership?
Oh, I think that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do for sure.
But they should have done this.
But it's going to be useless.
Okay, but so let's share what it is. So this was the liberal part of it. Was Trudeau was going to ban new foreign ownership on Canadian houses for 2 years. and then expand on the tax for foreign owned vacant housing. So yeah, that's my point.
Like, it sounds great. It's going to be bullshit.
That's my point to it.
Yes.
But and the reason why it's going to be bullshit, Nick, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the data that you share.
No. I just want to bring that up because it sounds good.
It sounds so good.
Like, the
but the reason Canadians aren't going to feel a benefit for that is that there are so many. Nick, you always share this data, and I don't have it top of mind, but I think from 2010 to 2015 there was like 80,000 foreign students in this country, and from 2015 to 2020 there's like 480,000. So it's like quintupled or something like that. And those students have legal status in Canada. So if they have a bank account somewhere else in the world that they can then just send money over here, they have legal status to accept that money.
It's not considered foreign owned.
It's not considered foreign owned. They have status. And then they can buy properties here. So
with
we
their
are not
parents' money or
unless
whatever.
we go to all the universities in Canada and say Western, Queen's, Brock, Mac, U of T, all the foreign students that you've just been gouging on for the last 5 years, you have to really throttle that down. I don't think it's going to have much effect on housing.
So do you think the foreign students are being sent here for that purpose?
Some of them are 100% because we know.
We talked to some of them.
Yeah,
yes.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
That's
we know
nuts.
with certainty that this is
and the
happening,
backup reason is get a degree at Canada, learn the language, get exposure, international exposure, and then maybe come home, but maybe stay.
There's 40-year-old sorts like foreign students that are coming over, going to like small colleges, taking the easiest program they can find. Wow. So they get the work permit after, then they can get the work experience, because when you do this and you have a Canadian education and Canadian work permit, it's much easier to then get permanent status here because you have more points in the system. Right. And then that's how they're I don't want to say circumventing, but that's how they're using our great immigration system to then bring over their. They might be when they come in here as a foreign student, they might be married with kids, but this is how they're able to then get in and permanent status.
When we were at the well, we bought the Tridel well, Toronto, maybe a year and a half ago. Every single person in there was Chinese. Everyone. Andrew and I and Montu were the only.
Yeah. I mean, there's just that much money. If there's a capital, look what's happening in China right now with that one big. I think they're going to be able to put fences around that and control it in China. But the biggest real estate,
I think if it was another country, maybe not. But it seems in China they'll
be able to control it. But it's that biggest real estate bank or mortgage company that's going under. They just announced today they're not going to do interest payments.
Yeah.
So if you are in China and you know that they have credit risk in there, you're going to do everything possible to get your money out. So it doesn't surprise me that you're seeing so many people from mainland China and Hong Kong in Toronto condo pre-construction sales.
When we were there, literally, Andrew and I, we were getting one condo, and they'd be like, Mr.
Who
whatever,
are you?
Here's your 4 keys. And me and Andrew are like, what?
Yeah,
here's your 4 keys.
Where are you getting that money? And how did you qualify for the financing in this country?
They're just writing checks.
We just paid cash.
Yeah.
I think it's hard sometimes for people to realize the amount of money through all the manufacturing that went to China. Like the amount.
Oh, for sure.
It's just monstrous. And then some of that is, and it's still not a massive amount that's actually leaving. And it's just that small amount. The impact it's been having. First it was Vancouver, and then it came more to Toronto, and it spread even beyond that. But but like the impact of that capital flight coming out is big.
Maybe that's why China just announced that they're allowed to have more children.
Well, they're looking at demographic problems, right?
So,
like in the future.
So you can see on this chart here, look, China went from under maybe 500 billion, whatever. Look at the year 2000.
So that's about 2005.
So about 3 trillion. It went up to 4 trillion.
Okay.
And then capital flight started. $1 trillion has left.
But look, it went from 500 billion to 4 trillion in not quite 10 years. It looks like it probably about 12 years or so.
Yeah.
Right?
So they had an extra 3 trillion, 3 and a bit.
That's 8
trillion.
times.
Yeah.
That's 800%.
And look, $1 trillion has left. So they still got an easy they got to keep some in the country, let's face it. But they got another $1 trillion. So if they've all done that with money flying out of the country, another $1 trillion easy can leave. Another $1 trillion. How big is our economy? Our economy. Remember, we've done this math before. Our economy is so small that if a tiny percentage of that lands in Canada, it has a dramatic effect on the real estate market.
Yeah. Conspiracy theory. I mean, is that a plan? Is that a plan to impact?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Canadian housing.
I don't think so. I really just think it's kind of some people in China saying, I want to get my money out of this country. Yeah. I mean, who knows?
I think with such a big population base, it doesn't take a lot of people. There's a certain percentage of people there that are like, yeah, I'd like to, I like China and stuff, but I'd like to be elsewhere. No different than Canadians move elsewhere and everything else, and they're trying to take their money out. And then there's some people also that have excess funds, and they're like, hey, I want to park it outside of here because I feel like it's protected when it's outside of there, so that it's further outside of government control there, right?
Right.
I have a question for you guys. You know, sometimes I'll talk about and say that U.S. debt was like $9 trillion in 2008 or so. Now it's 27 trillion. It's tripled over the last 12 years or so. So over this next decade, let's say it just keeps the same pace and it triples again from 27 trillion to 81 trillion. Okay,
which sounds insane.
But during that time, so
Canada,
Canada basically copies what the U.S. does with our deficits and our amount of debt. Sometimes we get more aggressive. Our interest rates mimic what they do. Sometimes they're lower than the U.S. Often they're lower. So if we just follow the U.S. trend, like we have in the last 10 years, property prices in this country in the last 10 years, Nick, if I pick a city like Hamilton, Ontario, they've tripled. Does that mean over this next 10 years, property prices triple? And then my question to you guys is, what happens if I'm underestimating this? What happens if the curve of spending and debt creation isn't slower? What happens if it's faster than the trend? Yeah. Do property prices more than triple? Or do you think they won't increase amortization rates can't go down, and that will kind of somehow thwart it?
I don't even understand how $1 million home right now is $1 million home. Tying all this back to people can't afford it. Like, what are people making? The average person, what are they making in Canada? What, 50 grand?
Yeah, I don't know average salary right now.
50
I think
or
Nick
60,
knows that one.
000?
Yeah, it's something like a 54.
It's about that.
I feel like it's 54,000 or something.
You know, how is two spouses supposed to afford $1 million? But in 10 years, that 60,000 might be 65,000. But
so I guess we're going to get income inflation. Incomes have to pop up. And with shortages at job postings that we're seeing, maybe we're in that era now where incomes pop up.
And inflation is 100% going to happen because the biggest cost for any company is employees. So that means costs are going to go up because employee costs are going to go up.
Got it. So then, so it's expenses go up for the company. That's passed on to the product or service. So prices 100%. Go up everywhere. So then they still no one can get ahead again.
Nobody.
Oh my God. Okay, so here, and I just ran some quick numbers because I was curious about this. So, $500,000 mortgage, 1.75% interest rate on at a 25-year mortgage is about $2,100. So I changed it. I'm like, if you change that to a 50-year mortgage, because there's a lot of countries that have 50-year mortgages, right, on the term. I'm like, what does it take to make that payment? Because again, I think that people just care about the payment. So that mortgage then goes from $500,000 to keep roughly the same payment up to $820,000. So you have what's that? About a 60% increase, all of a sudden, just in that, just the amortization change. So if you combine amortization change
with another point drop in rates. Holy shit!
Like a doubling with, and this is without wage. This is without wage increase. So if you change some policies, you could potentially have people owning properties at the same carrying costs, although taxes will go up, but at the same carrying costs, and with double the price.
So the student rental that we always joke about, that's worth right now like $800. We bought for $250. It's worth like $800,000. This is by McMaster. Mm-hmm. At that math, if we do continue the trend, that means by the end of this decade, that student rental is going to be. Hold on, let me triple it. 1.6, 2 point.
I'm saying double. I'm saying double.
I'm going for the triple. Yeah. I'm going for the triple.
Trifecta.
So we're saying that this student rental, and you're saying it's going to be 1.6 million at the. I know we're all guessing.
Yeah.
And I'm saying it's going to be worth $2.4 million at the end of this decade. $2.4 million at the end of this decade. A property we bought for $250,000. That's tenfold from when we bought it.
And I mean, that's real. That is real money. Going from house to house is shit.
Yeah, but when you have investments, that's a good point. That's a good point. So my example earlier, where if you live in your house and it's going up in value, you're not really getting ahead because if you move, you haven't achieved anything. But if you own other assets, that's real gains.
Yeah, and that's to your point, to your advice of what you give people when they're talking to you, when they come to you saying, "Hey, what do you think?" Right? It changes it.
Man up. Like to me, I think everyone needs to make moves to go bigger now, based on what we know, but based on what we're talking about. It just sounds
so scary every time I hear JP say that.
And I'm an accountant. I'm supposed to be conservative. It makes me
You're
scared.
a weird accountant.
Well, you know what? Yeah. But you told me that when I was buying the house that we're in now. We were moving from our first house, and we were keeping our first house. So this house became a little bit more of a stretch for us. And this was now, I think we've been there 8 years now. And at the time, it's, we were having a discussion like, well, what do you think is going to happen to the debt? I'm like, yeah, I guess like this mortgage is going to look small.
If they're going to solve debt with more debt, let's take on some debt.
Yeah. And so we did that, because at that time, and you went to like kind of a middle house before you moved again, right? So this was bigger
Which
than
was
kind
a
of
huge mistake.
Yeah, because you had to move again. You're like, hey, learn from my mistake. You don't have to do that twice. I'm like, okay, so maybe I'll try that. And we took the plunge, and it was well worth it. So it was similar along the same lines of what you're saying. We ended up doing 8 years ago, and I look back now, I'm like, yeah, well, basically it was like the house, like I bought it for the value of a townhouse today.
So with your accounting firm, then the people that you're seeing who are making gains are those only who have assets, I assume. Is that what you see? They own businesses, assets, anyone who has income as their sole revenue source isn't getting ahead unless they have other assets.
I do have clients that make really good money, $500,000-$600,000 a year. They're a lot of people are just sitting in cash. And a lot of people are scared.
Oh, so they're sitting in cash because they're waiting for the real estate market to correct.
They're waiting for
all the markets.
All the market. And to me, to your question before.
Can they buy Bitcoin? Did you tell them about Bitcoin? Give them some books.
I'll
give you some books.
Give advice about stock market or
Bitcoin
because I'm not as educated as in housing, and I believe in housing much more than I do those. Bitcoin's it's a new thing. It's not new.
Sure, we don't have to get into debating that.
But the stock market, is completely overpriced. Almost everything on there is 10 times more.
But
on a valuation. Yeah, on a value base.
On historic valuation. But can't you say the same thing with the real estate market? And based on what we're talking about with all these things being messed up?
No, because supply and demand. So, a company is valued one way.
The earnings.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're all overpriced. The Canadian housing we say is overpriced, but it's not because people are
because of the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my because this sounds like a Warren Buffett kind of approach on the stock market. My thinking on the stock market right now, because I have not spent the time to investigate how the stock market works, is that if everybody thinks it's overvalued, and most people I speak to think it's overvalued, Nick and I have found in our lives when everybody thinks one way, do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So if I just boil it down to that, I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone I speak to says the S&P is like way too high. Like, look at this, it's a joke. And I'm like, Nick, that's kind of done really well for us. So if I had to, which I won't, I refuse to invest in the stock market. To me, it's pure gambling. Right. I don't understand it. I feel like if I'm not on the board of directors of a company, I shouldn't be investing in it because I don't have control. Maybe because Nick, you and I are control freaks, but I just will not do it. But if I had to, if you forced my hand and said pick up or down from here over the next 10 years, I'd go with up.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, got it.
I just know the ups on real estate,
they make sense to you. You can break out the fundamental.
The math and the leveraged investing, and you can make 35% on a 4% appreciation rate. You can make 30 to 35% on your money versus, like you said, gambling on stock market.
So those people that you see sitting on cash, almost rightfully so, if they're not educated in a different area, it's almost don't do anything.
Exactly.
But are they panicking?
No,
or they just think this is the right thing to do. They're waiting.
Yeah, and when you're making $600,000 a year, you've got money in the bank.
And your clients, you're not dealing with. You typically deal with business owners and people who have some assets already.
Yeah, and we have a ton of maybe 300 personal and not even self-employed employees as well. So we do a lot.
Okay. So I guess the best example would be people who work in your office. If they're young, they think they can't get into the real estate market, and they're never going to get into the real estate market.
Yeah,
and your response to them is just figure out a way.
100 to anybody, figure out a way to get into this market because you're going to get priced out.
And then the best way would be to rent out part of the house, move further away.
For me, no. For me, I like to pick where you want to be. I left Toronto because I didn't want to do that friggin' drive anymore. So my office is 5 minutes from my house. My daughter's school is right across the street. I like simplicity, and I think everyone should have that. Anyone driving to work, quit.
That's like the basic advice. That's how I felt when I was driving in traffic every day.
Well, it's exactly.
Some people enjoy it though. So,
yeah.
For me, it was misery.
Yeah.
But then, okay, so if the office is in Burlington, really their only options are to buy a small condo or something that they can rent out part of it.
Or buy it with someone.
Or buy it with somebody. Okay, sorry, I forgot you said that. Or do a joint venture, buy it with somebody.
Yeah, which we're seeing people do here. Like people that work, guys that are working here, get together with friends, and they own a couple properties now. And what's funny is the first property they bought has appreciated enough they can refinance and take enough money out now to then buy a third. They ended up buying a second one. They got a third buddy involved. Yeah. The first one was 2 of them. The second one was 3 of them. Now they go back to the first property. They're able to refinance that one to take enough money out to go buy another one.
And eventually they'll be, because they started with the first one with 2 of them, and then the second one with three.
Yeah.
And now as they build up some equity, eventually they can go out on their own.
Yeah.
So you start with people, with friends, you work, you hustle. And he's been hustling hard, renovating the property to get it ready for rent and the whole bit. But that's how to get started.
You got to work. I mean, this is what all 3 of us, I think, would do.
Agreed.
You have to get into it, or don't get into it and say, I'm not going to be.
So this is going to go out after the election's over. Yep. Who is our prime minister when this goes live? I'm going to say Liberal minority. I'm not saying who I'm voting for. Not that I'm trying to hide it, but I'm just saying
you know what? How do you vote? I think this is one of the things that most people are confused about.
I think there's no good options right now, but
but how do you pick? How do you select? I'll tell you how I do. Plain and simple.
Okay.
Based on their tax. Based on how they're going to tax individuals.
But you believe them? I remember when the Conservatives promised for no capital gains tax, and they took that away from us, and it's haunted me ever since.
They're less likely to.
Got it. Okay. So how they tax. So then you're voting conservative.
Yeah, conservatives, in my opinion, tend to take money away from the system instead of spending $14 billion on homes.
What's the tax? I don't see it covered. What's the People's Party of Canada? What's their tax plan? I don't know either.
I have no idea.
None of us know.
So one is to tax the rich to pay for all of this. That's more in the Liberal and the NDP. And the conservatives tend to be on fighting for...
I look
the
at
upper hand.
I don't look at that makes sense. But the thing with the way the taxes are, I don't look at the Liberal Party the way they're doing it. Maybe it's just being led by Justin Trudeau. Maybe it's just the whole party's gone this way. I don't look at them being the same Liberal Party that they were even 10 or 20 years ago. They're almost like the way the NDP was 10 or 20 years ago. And the Conservative Party now is almost like the way the Liberals were 10 or 20 years ago, because they're not even near what they were before. So yeah, it's like the whole dynamic, everything has kind of shifted to the left, right? And I don't know.
I think what's driving me right now is I look at people the way they speak, and Nick knows this, and it's fair to laugh at this. I do a lot of things just on my emotional feeling towards someone. And when I hear people speak, if I feel they're not coming from integrity, it bothers me.
Right.
And politicians generally...
So you don't like Trudeau?
No, Trudeau. I can't. I really struggle thinking that he's coming from a place of integrity when he speaks. It doesn't feel that way. Right. But then, in defense of maybe Trudeau, I'm not sure how much the other ones are either, because they're all politicians.
Yeah.
So
I would say, so to back to your question, was I at the beginning of this I was like, you know what, Trudeau's going to get in again, and I've spoken to enough liberals, like people who voted Liberal in the past, that have said to me now, they're like, yeah, like the guy just won't answer a question. So these were people who voted Trudeau before. They're just like, I can't. And to your point, they're like, they can't even.
I hate that.
They don't like hearing him speak anymore. And I think that's got me thinking, and maybe it's just hopeful, because I'm not a Trudeau fan at all. Maybe it's got me hopeful that it's a conservative. I think it ends up being a conservative minority though.
That would be nuts. I think Justin called this.
Yeah. I think it's a liberal minority, but you're right. That would be nuts.
I said he was getting in before, like when it started. I've said he's going to get in.
I have noticed, JP and I were talking about this, more people than ever have come up to me telling me they're voting. I've had way more. I don't know if it's our age. Yeah. It could be our age.
And I said to you, conservatives, from what I know, people that would vote conservative tend not to vote because they're.
And what do you think this time they are voting?
I think you're going to see a lot more people voting.
But even if a lot more, okay, so if we take that angle and a lot more conservatives vote, sometimes if you're all in one riding,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter.
That's the thing. Yeah. I just think, think that this,
So like if everybody comes out in, one area, like, I don't know, Richmond Hill and votes conservative, big deal if the other areas all go different ways.
Right.
Yeah. I just think the dislike for Trudeau has grown in this country in a larger way than I had thought.
I'm just kind of hesitating. It's like, who do we trust? Like, there's no like, I'm trying to think. No. Like, remember in the U.S., whenever I heard, what was her name? Tulsi.
Tulsi Gabbard. She's the best. I'd campaign for her.
Every time I heard her on Rogan's show, I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like I totally believe her.
Yeah, right.
She sounds like she's speaking her truth.
But Clinton, remember Hillary Clinton tried to shut her down quick.
Yeah, I remember that.
She was against the Democratic, she was a Democrat, but against the Democratic establishment, and they basically just shut her down.
But who in Canada, like, we don't have a Tulsi in Canada, do we?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, the Conservatives haven't done, I didn't even know who the guy's name was, O'Toole?
Aaron O'Toole.
Like, they have done such a bad job marketing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or depending on the result, maybe they've done a good job letting Trudeau implode.
Their marketing strategy was let him do.
But I feel like aren't the Liberals, we're recording this a few days before the election, I think they're ahead right now by 3 points.
I've seen varying polls. It seems like it's neck and neck. Basically, to your point, it doesn't even matter. Those polls almost don't even matter because they're just votes. It's going to be riding to riding, and the 905 region is one of the most. It's basically this region and one in BC. I think that they're going after. I don't know, but this is like one of the core, most important regions in the whole country. It basically has a real good chance of deciding kind of who wins. Mm-hmm. So, if
it's close, the People's Party of Canada are going to be blamed for splitting the Conservative vote, and I'm not sure that's quite fair. Because I'm not sure.
JP's point.
Yeah, I'm not sure people who would have voted. I don't think they would have ever voted. I think that's not going to be a fair argument. But I definitely think we'll see that in the headlines.
Right.
Weird.
Fun.
Somebody listening to this has to go into politics. Let us know. Come on a podcast. Help. Yeah. SOS.
Get the tax guy in to talk
JP,
politics.
the website, how to reach out to you. If you so JP, cares? What type of clients do you typically work with? Lay it out.
Right now, you guys know Fab and I are kind of splitting our services. Our book, I'm going, right now we're cmllp.com. I don't know what Fab's really focusing on. Some of the same stuff, some new stuff. I'm still sticking with small business, real estate investors, and we're going to be looking at taking on some personal tax stuff. After the last podcast I did with you guys, I got probably 100 phone calls. So
this one we
didn't. That's why you came back.
Yeah, that's why.
I didn't want to talk to you guys.
But this time we didn't talk about taxes at all. Yeah, so no one's going to be reaching out to small business. So it really worked to your advantage.
Maybe someone wants me to run for
maybe there
Prime
we
Minister.
go. So small businesses, people who own small businesses, real estate investors, individuals, and the URL is CM.
LLP.com.
Yeah, LLP. I think you said CMLP the first time. CMLLP.com. And when you mentioned Fab, it's Fabio Campanella who comes onto this podcast. He was on 2 weeks ago talking about crypto and taxes. Yep. But CMLLP.com is the best way to get through to John Paul McDonald and his team.
And we have our own podcast. Can I plug that or no?
Of course.
Yeah, that one's Smarten Up with JP and Fab, where we talk a lot about just small tax things and bring on some guests and legal stuff like that. So cool. A lot of stuff that might be
awesome
to your guys.
Awesome. Cool. JP, always fun chatting about all this kind of stuff.
We
really, you know what I really enjoy? That you're not scared to just share your views.
Yeah.
So totally appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
And we did not plug your accounting services hardly at all. So there we go.
There we go.
We'll
didn't need to.
Leave it at that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.